There is no power in isolation. There is power in disengagement. Even if you want to use the analogy of the Matrix, Neo, being plugged in or plugging yourself out of the Matrix. See, the funny thing about the Matrix, even if you just look at the movies or the Matrix as a philosophy, you have to come to the eventual conclusion that most people can't be saved. They don't want to be saved, right? And oftentimes, especially when you're on this level of thought, I guess this, not to say it's like a higher or lower level of thought, so to speak, but this niche of thought, I should say. And you've finally realized that most people are just bots with pre-programmed excuses and shaming tactics and just deflections and, look on the bright side or look on the, okay, yeah, it's bad, but it's good enough for me kind of thing, right? Isolation sounds like peace, and it is peace initially. How you do it and how most people do it eventually sends you back into the toxic patterns you were trying to avoid, though. Probably even makes them worse. Because you have to contend with your own programming. We are social beings. Human beings are social beings, just like most other mammals. We are engineered to want to be around one another. That's how we've survived for so long. In fact, there's the trope of the lone wolf doesn't really exist. Even wolves hunt in packs. We want to believe that we're the ones at the top of the mountain and we just got there and we were built for it. It's great. It's really nice headcanon, really good motivation porn, but it's not true. We are wired to want to be around one another. We do it in spite of risks, in spite of consequences, because it's biologically wired in us to seek out. The problem is most interactions nowadays are so vacuous and they're so self-replicating with how vacuous they are that social interactions just exist for the sake of it. We've commodified social interactions so much. You have curated the perfect Instagram feed, TikTok, TikTok Reel. I don't know what they're called. You've curated this perfect social utopia online. But when the camera's off, when the phone's off, I really wonder what these people do. I wonder what they think. Do they ever let their minds stay still for more than half an hour? Is that why so many people just lose their shit so often? Because they allow their minds to stay quiet for even like half an hour or even an hour? We are filled with existential dread from the moment we can figure out what death is as children. We are immediately filled with existential dread, and everything we do up until we die is just push it further and further and further down. Do you ever wonder why you've never met a mortician in your life. Unless maybe your family member's a mortician or something, or you're in med school, you're in an environment where interacting with the deceased is common. But in the wider society, you never meet a coroner, a mortician, a forensic pathologist. And it's by design. The more developed we've become, the more easier it is to shove death out of our sight. And if you look at 19th century photography, it was often a way for parents to preserve the memories of their dead children, because the mortality rate was still high then, especially for child mortality. But with the advent of photography, people would literally stitch up the corpses of their children or whoever it is, their loved one, dress them up, stitch their eyes open, and take one last photo with them. And it's kind of eerie when you look at some of those old photos, not knowing, like, is this person dead or alive, right? We had to embrace death. We had to. We had to make it a part of our existence. Even so, we still kept on pushing out babies. We still kept on just inseminating and reproducing and inseminating and, the future generations will have it much better off, right? They didn't think nuclear power was going to come up. They didn't think social media was going to come up. We've effectively managed to push death to the back of the societal psyche. And I think, to me, that is humanity's ultimate end goal, is to cease being humans. To cease the specter of death itself. And you, as somebody who has to contend with your own mortality, to accept it, to try and help others contend with their own mortality, you're never going to get anywhere far with that. You won't. It's the knee-jerk reaction for them it would be a knee-jerk reaction for any organism that could contemplate its own death to reject that idea, right? That's not the issue. The issue is, why continue a fucking like a circus show, like a freak show of just the worst possible ideas humanity has ever come up with, just to conform. You see that as somebody who's in their mind. I would say conscious, but a lot of the woo-woo spiritual bullshit that's out here right now is just, it's hippie capitalism. That's what it is. It's hippie capitalism. I would rather deal with the hardline evangelical than any spiritual freaking conscious type, right? But when I say conscious, I mean conscious of conscious of the consequences, of the eventual consequences of our bad patterns of thinking. I remember a few years back when I was just overwhelmed with people's bullshit, and I craved isolation. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to be around anyone. And I achieved that. But shortly after that, I literally had a fucking psychotic episode. Why? Because I pulled myself out too quickly. It's like ripping a bandage it's ripping a bandage off of a wound that has used the bandage to heal. You know, a bandage isn't supposed to heal a wound. It's just supposed to cover it up while the skin repairs itself. You know, you might have a scab or whatever, but the scab is your bandage. The bandage is it's like a bed sheet or a bed cover. But when you rip off a bandage, you're ripping the scab off as well. And that's what happened. Even now, I could get those impulses to just rip myself out and just isolate myself somewhere, but I saw the end result and I didn't like it. It made me even more dependent on the fucking people that I was trying to get away from. But slowly I learned it's not about isolating or withdrawing. It's about disengaging. Think of it as pulling a plug, right? Or not even that. You know, you can turn off a light switch. You can turn off the switch of let's say your laptop, or you can just go and straight pull out the plug. It would make sense to turn the switch off first and then pull out the plug. Or you can just pull out the plug from the laptop itself rather than the power source. Disengagement is where you will find your level. And our bodies are conditioned. We don't have free will, right? I will definitely be talking about that later on. We don't have free will. What we have is the ability to condition our bodies, right? We understand that you are a series of reward systems and pain receptors, and you know, you're a collection of that. And understand that you can condition yourself to act a certain way, to do a certain thing. You can't ultimately, you really can't choose. You can condition yourself though. And when you disengage, you start conditioning yourself to responding in a more healthier way for yourself. In a more functional pattern, right? You can look at your friend group right now and probably realize that 99% of those people will not be around when you actually need them. You're friends out of geographical convenience, which is most people, right? If you and your friends left to different countries or something, or different cities, how long do you think those friendships would last? Right? Even then, even just look as it is right now. Observe them. Observe their interactions with you and with other people. And the pathological things that they do, that you know they do and you don't want to partake in, begin to disengage. Don't pull yourself out completely. That might work in some instances, probably in like a life or death instance. Obviously, you have to just like rip yourself out. That is the knee-jerk reaction to of a survival mechanism, right? That's what it is. But disengagement is the only way to make it through this. Even purgatory isn't even the word. Would you know you're in purgatory if you were in purgatory? I keep calling it a hellscape, a dumpster fire, and I think those work very well. You know, we are walking through the fire right now. And the only way you're going to become a master at it is by pulling yourself out of it. Look at it as we're all in a web, and everybody is tangled to one degree, right? There's some people who are just completely wrapped up in cocoons and they've already been halfway digested by the spider. There's some people that have just gotten stuck onto it. There's just some people with one leg stuck onto it. And, you have to assess what level of tangled you are and realize that you can untangle yourself. The way you got tangled is the way you will untangle yourself. You conditioned yourself to be tangled. But you can undo it. When you go about doing it, though, have, a relevant support system that involves as few people as possible, functional thinking habits, a long-term plan for the future, and an early retirement plan. Find fulfillment in the fact that even if you have to be here, at least walk on your own terms, to the best of your ability, right? I know these are very tenuous terms I'm using, but to the best of your ability, don't pull away. Just detangle yourself one limb at a time, and things will start unraveling. Your life will unravel in front of you for sure, but in the best way possible.